If at first you don't succeed, try again? Well, fourth time's the charm, I guess. Fantastic Four is the MCU's attempt to bring the first family to the big screen, this time pulling in the acting talents of Vanessa Kirby, Eben Moss-Backrack, Joseph Quinn, and lesser-known actor Pedro Pascal? Pascal? Whatever, I'm probably never gonna see him appear in any other movie again anyway, so it doesn't matter. Set in an alternate space-age futuristic Earth, this film finds the family as a fully established team of heroes who prepare to welcome a baby into their crazy celebrity lives. But all that is soon put on hold when the Silver Surfer, played by Julie Gardner, arrives to herald the coming of a planet-eating entity called Galactus, who this time is thankfully not a cloud. The Fantastic Four must now quite literally race against space and time to stop the imminent world-devouring threat before everything they know is destroyed. And right off the bat, let me say that yes, this is the best Fantastic Four movie we've ever gotten. But is that really saying anything groundbreaking? Considering that the competition is a low-budget corporate attempt to retain the rights, the second attempt was a pair of charming but ultimately forgettable early 2000s flicks, and the last attempt was the worst comic book movie of the last decade. So yeah, not exactly the best competition. Kinda like the Chiefs were at the last Super Bowl. Go Birds. But with 2025's Fantastic Four, it's clear that director Matt Shakman had a lot of love for the source material, and there are numerous times where that love shines through the screen. It's just an absolute shame that this passion that he had for the project was ultimately hampered by the MCU corporate machine and is ultimately held back from being truly great. Now, if you're a longtime viewer of my channel, if not, please subscribe, then you would know that 2 years ago I said that there was a decent chance that Guardians 3 would be the last great Marvel movie. And I didn't make that statement to be a doomer and cast doubt on every new MCU project coming out. I love comic books and I want every new theatrical adaptation to be great. But it was clear that James Gunn was an extremely talented director they had in their roster, and he was ultimately allowed to make the exact kinds of movies he wanted to make. A luxury that Kevin Feige seemingly doesn't allow any other filmmaker to do. But the trailers for this looked promising, and I was mostly on board with the cast they had picked out. Perhaps this was going to be the moment where I could say I was proven wrong. But just to be clear, if you're going into this with the hope that it will be different from every other MCU project, then that hope is going to be ultimately wasted. This is sadly just another run-of-the-mill MCU flick, only with a different paint job. Now I will say that the world building on display here is quite tremendous, and one of my favorite aspects of the movie. This retro-futuristic setting was done perfectly, and helped to distinguish this from previous Fantastic Four attempts. The superhero team started under that space race setting, so this kind of aesthetic fits them like a glove, far more than early 2000s action movie vibes ever did. When the story and emotion of this movie seemed to hit a snag, it was the production design that ultimately picked up the slack. The retro-futuristic setting was so cool, but at the same time it made me want to see more from it. There's a really neat opening montage that's meant to catch us up on what the four have been doing over the last few years, but that montage is what I wanted this whole movie to be. We see the team getting involved in all these wacky comic booky adventures and just generally being awesome. It was this intro that tricked me into thinking we were actually going to get a great movie that felt different from the 5 phases worth of products we've gotten before from this studio. But if you're not a fan of montages, then holy crap, you're gonna hate this thing, because there are several times when the film just montages through large chunks of time that you kinda lose track of where and when you are. The story just felt so rushed. We'd be in the middle of this life or death situation, watching the characters deal with a certain thing, and next thing you know we'd cut to the next scene and we're told an entire month has passed. Or they do these quick edits to give us the plot points to catch us up on what we've missed. So if you ever wish that movies were formatted like SparkNotes essays, then I guess this is the film for you. Gotta be real, it gave me slight Fantastic vibes with the way it was edited. Now, clearly, this wasn't nearly as bad as that one was. It's not like we're missing an entire second act, but still you can tell that Hat Man really trimmed things down. I know that a lot of people avoid watching trailers to prevent themselves from getting spoiled, but honestly at this point, they cut out most of what you see in the trailers anyway, so it's like a different movie entirely. I don't know what Feige's obsession is with not allowing a movie to be over an hour 55, but when you can tell that 30 minutes of crucial screen time was left on the cutting room floor, then maybe it's time to rethink your strategy, dude. Alright, I know this is coming off harsher than I intended. There's a fair number of things in this project that did work for me. For starters, the cast of the four themselves were all great. I know there's a Pedro Pascal fatigue right now, but he did portray the perfect Reed Richards. Aside from displaying the intelligence well, he was also able to perfectly capture the guilt complex that comic Reed has. He's so smart that he feels like he should have prevented what happened to the group originally, and he carries that guilt with him day to day with every situation they face. I also thought his relationship with Vanessa Kirby was solid, and she was tremendous as the Invisible Woman. Occasionally her British accent would slip out from time to time, but still, she was able to capture the elegance and strength from the character from the original source material. Joseph Quinn as the Human Torch was also quite good, and he was one of the casting choices I was worried about originally. Johnny's always been portrayed as a hothead, but I appreciated that the movie actually gave him scientific stuff to do that mattered to the story. Eben Moss-Bachrach, sorry if I butchered that name, as the Thing was the one character who I felt the most shortchanged. The performance itself was decent, but he didn't really have a lot to offer the plot in general. I would say that this was the one aspect that the 2005 movie handled better than this one. They attempt to shoehorn in some kind of love story subplot, but that very quickly falls in the background. I don't know, maybe that's part of the half hour they cut out. But overall, the Fantastic Four themselves were pretty good, as was Galactus played by Ralph Ineson. As previously mentioned, the filmmakers actually brought the larger-than-life villain straight off the pages of the comic books. No far clouds here, baby! Ineson's voice is a perfect match for this kind of role, and it reverberated deep into my soul in that ultra-screen theater. It's truly a testament to how far comic book movies have come in the last few decades, where studios were originally petrified to do this kind of goofy stuff. Now it's just accepted by general audiences. I just think that's neat. Julie Gardner was also great as Silver Surfer. This movie is diving headfirst into the cosmic realm of the subject matter, and her character perfectly embodied that, helping to flesh out a side of the cinematic universe that hasn't been explored before. But you can tell that even her stuff was cut from the final runtime, especially in relation to some of the decisions her character makes in the third act. I will give credit to Marvel attempting to delve into the space stuff. It's certainly more ambitious than their previous projects, but just keep in mind you'll get your standard dose of MCU patented quips throughout, proving that it doesn't matter if you have a story taking place in a separate Earth in a different universe, you are still gonna get a bunch of unfunny jokes that completely ruin the tension of things. I think my packed theater maybe laughed twice throughout the 2-hour runtime, which was, painful to sit through. And it's strange, because I heard a lot of people bitching and moaning about how Superman had way too many jokes that compromised its dramatic stakes, but yet they're not saying that about this one? Even though there were multiple times in Superman where there was no humor, like when Clark was having a moment with his parents or when Lex was being evil. Here, this band of superheroes are told that their world is about to come to an end, and yet they're still lightheartedly roasting Johnny, trading barbs back and forth like nothing's changed. I don't know, just something I noticed. And does it surprise anyone that the best part of the film was Michael Giacchino's score? No? No one's surprised because he's an absolute goat who never misses? Alright, nice, moving on. So yeah, the movie both sounds and looks good. The visuals here are mostly solid. There is one chase sequence in particular that I will say is worth the price of admission alone, diving into those cosmic elements I had referred to earlier. I won't go into too much detail, but needless to say it was a great combination of genuine personal stakes and awesome Interstellar-esque visuals. But I did notice the CGI take quite a bit of dip in quality in the film's back half, probably because this is where those classic Marvel reshoots took place. And no matter how far we've come as a civilization, Hollywood will never be able to make CGI babies look good in any way, shape, or form. I know that you're already running the risk of incorporating an infant in any major blockbuster story, and it's always going to be a tricky thing to navigate. You don't want to have a repeat of the American Sniper fake doll situation, but at the same time, it isn't great to be reminded of Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 while watching this $1 million Disney production. No? No other guys saw Breaking Dawn Part 2? Yeah, me neither. Anyway. So overall, I found Fantastic Four to be a mixed bag. I hate to go into this kind of discourse, but I guess I already brought it up, so I might as well just rip the band-aid off now. I preferred Superman over this film. I guess it's fair, because these are two major comic book productions that are coming out within 2 weeks of each other. While I feel both movies could have benefited from longer runtimes, I think that Superman suffered less from that problem than this one did. That felt like a fresh dive into another world that left me feeling optimistic as I walked out of the theater. I didn't get that feeling here. I left the theater feeling kinda numb. Superman felt like a complete story that left you wanting more. Fantastic Four just felt like an unfinished product with lots of untapped potential. Which sucks because there are genuinely great things in this movie. The production value and score are stellar, I think the cast is well suited for their roles, and Galactus was a solid antagonist. But all of these elements are ultimately held back by both a studio and a creative head that seem content to repeatedly mess with their director's visions and butcher their final products. This could have been a top 3 MCU movie of all time. Instead, it just comes off as yet another installment from the sinking ship of a franchise. Obviously better than recent Marvel projects and other Fantastic Four movies, but ultimately not having anything memorable to make it last for years to come. Heck, I'd even say I like the Thunderbolts more than this, which would have been crazy to say to me a year ago. So in the end, I'm gonna give the Fantastic Four a B-.